let me see if I can do this, and we'll see how it looks. All right. So here is the Facebook post here. Um, First, and let me know if I'm mispronouncing here. First, Maldek,
Maldek, yep.
and then Lemuria, then Atlantis. We never learn. Don't let the evil warmongers destroy the civilization for the fourth time with yet another nuclear holocaust. Pray for Ukraine and North Korea. I'll take that off so you can see us better. So I was I still am very concerned about the warmongering obsession that is really going on. I know Elon Musk said something about just wanting a peaceful resolution to the situation between Russia and Ukraine, and the bots on Twitter just went after him. And it's like, it really seems like there's a desire to enter a nuclear war, and I don't think people understand what that means. Now, beyond that, obviously, the three prior civilizations is maybe the best way to say it. So I wanted to ask you to give me a little background on those first. I think we briefly touched on Atlantis last time we talked, but not in any real depth.
See, the difference between you and the masses, Jeff, is that you have a conscience, and you can think outside of the box. And there's a lot of people like you and me, and a lot of people who are getting this awareness that they can think outside the box and not be manipulated by the media. And the media is especially designed to manipulate the masses, hypnotize them. And, unfortunately, in these days, that which is truth is looked upon as lies, and that which is lies is looked upon as truth. So it's important for independent podcasters to bring out essences of truth. And people are so, like I say, opinionated that if somebody, I think there was an actor who talked about the reality of the Iraq War, where 1 million people, were murdered in the Iraq War over an invasion that had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. And it was finally found out that, that they were after the oil. And then the American public went ballistic on this actor because he dared to tell the truth. But he had a conscience. And, so it's important these days to have a little bravery and stand up. Lies eventually will be opened. Unfortunately, we just like that statement I made. Some people supported it, other people laughed at it. I mean, but when I wrote in my book that the greatest lie detector ever made is your intuition. And it's important these days that people use discrimination, use the still small voice from within, or the higher aspects of man, to tell them what's right and what's wrong. And these truths about our last civilizations have never really been open to the public. So again, I'll do a brief history of why we're actually here on this planet at this particular time. I think I mentioned that in the last broadcast that I followed a yogi master by the name of Dr. George King since the age of 16, bypassing my own religious upbringing and the religious upbringing that I had in England under a Christian faith. And so, he proved to me in many ways that he was a genuine yogi master. And if people research yogi masters of the East, they have tremendous powers. They can go into deep meditation, into like a kind of a yogic death, and project from their body, into their astral body, and go in and read certain aspects of the earth. I mean, a yogi master just basically, I mean, he can look at your aura, because we're spiritual beings in physical bodies, not the other way around. We have an aura, we have a psychic center, and within the aura, they can see all your past lives. And so by looking in your aura, they they can not only reveal your past life, but also your present and your future. And it's the same with our Mother Earth. She's also a living, breathing entity with an aura, and a master of yoga is able to project and read the aura of the planet. Some people refer to that as the Akashic records in the East, and a full fourth dimensional. It's like a super colossal computer that records the whole history of mankind. And so you don't need historians, dusting out excavations of civilizations past. This again, to all advanced masters, is available, and it tells unadulterated truth of what actually happened to the human race 18 million years ago. We're actually not from this earth. We're actually a race that was actually living on another planet between Jupiter and Mars, which was known as Maldek. And 18 million years ago, this was a very advanced race of beings. Dr. King wrote a book in the 60s called The Nine Freedoms. If people want to learn more about our history and our evolution, they can get that from Amazon. It's called The Nine Freedoms by Dr. George King. But by him, going into these advanced meditative states, was able to read the true history. He said that the civilization of Maldek was a very highly advanced civilization, both technically and spiritually. He said that robots took care of all the menial tasks on this planet. So the planet was highly mechanized. He said they could control the weather by controlling the subtle energies. So it was kind of like utopia. I mean, the Bible talks about Adam and Eve and the fall from the Garden of Eden. I mean, that in itself is a bit of a fairy story, but they were probably referring to the fall of Maldek. And then what happened, there was an abundance of food, and we all lived in total peace and harmony. And then for some reason, some scientists decided to forego the majority and again delved into the atom and invented a hydrogen bomb, which Dr. King said was 10,000 times more powerful than the hydrogen bomb that we have on Earth. And they exploded this bomb, and it completely blew up the whole planet. All that's left of our home planet Maldek is the asteroid belt. And it's very interesting now that scientists are saying that the asteroid belt could have been a planet that at one time was blown up. And so from there, we were released onto the different etheric planes, because nothing dies. We went to different planes. And from there, the Earth herself was approached. And at that time, there was a race of beings on Earth called Adamic man, who allowed this race to eventually reincarnate over thousands of years and become somewhat a civilization again. And then the civilization of Lemuria again was much more highly cultured, more technically advanced than we are now. So what I'm trying to tell your listeners is that we were actually advanced beings, and we regressed tremendously. And again, Lemuria was destroyed in an atomic war, and then thousands of years later, another civilization grew and again, advanced, and that was the civilization of Atlantis. There's not much information on Lemuria, on Maldek, but in regards to Atlantis, a lot of the Vedic texts, the Hindu Vedic texts, which go back to about 20,000 years or so, texts like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, talk about flying machines, vimanas, talk about a whole, troops being fizzled out by atomic, rays that were thrown from these vimanas. Basically, they were talking about an atomic explosion, atomic war, which occurred 100,000 years ago. And again, the Earth flipped her axis, and the Great Flood occurred, and down went Atlantis under the ocean, which also happened to Lemuria. And so history again seems to be repeating itself. In the right after the terrible World War II, again, for some reason, the basic aspect of man decided to invent the atomic race again. And so in the 50s, we started exploding these atom and hydrogen bombs. I think America exploded over 1,000, Russia exploded 1,000. And it was very interesting that at that time was when my Yogi Master was contacted by these higher space beings who were very concerned again with mankind starting this atomic race. And so they actually intervened a lot, because even today, scientists are agreeing that with all that fallout, all of us should have been dead by now. And a lot of that, there was an American observation satellite in the 60s that was observing the ionosphere and recorded a lot of radiation fallout. And then a week or so later, they did that same scan, and the radiation fallout disappeared. So somebody, again, on our behalf, some higher beings, advanced beings, intervened on our behalf and probably saved us. But it seems that we're regarded in this solar system and beyond as a very savage, warlike race, and we are, and we just don't learn. And so we've reached this point now in our history: either we change or we will not be allowed to stay on this planet. So that's just an update of where we are at this present moment.
Is not that you necessarily would know the answer. Is there just a flaw in our design that, I mean, presumably there's other species across the universe that maybe have similar destructive patterns, but it just seems like there's a flaw in the design. And I always think, one thing I always talk about when I talk to people about politics is, I'm like, that I think anyone who runs for president is inherently evil, because they wouldn't be running for president if they were a good person, because you have to get your hands so dirty just to get into that level where it's a possibility. So it just seems like we set up structures as a humanity where the people who are willing to be the bad ones are able to take control over the people who maybe otherwise would be okay. And maybe that's just a modern day reading into maybe recent things, how I see it. But it just seems like there's some sort of flaw that we just can't get out of our own way.
There is a basic flaw, and I would regard it as a spiritual sickness, because right now we're beginning, we started the age of Aquarius. So astrologically, the planets aligned in the age of Aquarius is now pushing, emanations are being pushed to the planet, to the people, that on the realization that, first of all, we're one human race. And that's one thing that's been designed over the centuries. This difference in races, in religions and cultures and whatever, has been specially designed to make us look different, so there's two aspects of the law which people have not been exposed to on a mass scale. First of all is the understanding of the divine law, which is the law of karma, which is action and reaction being opposite and equal. I mean, if that was taught in the schools, people would think differently about going in and shooting up, and murdering people, because according to the divine law, you can't get away with anything. So we're totally responsible for our actions.